she didn't want me there. My own daughter, the girl I raised, the girl I sacrificed for, the girl I cheered through every milestone, told me I was too embarrassing to attend her graduation. Can you imagine that? After years of late nights helping with homework, paying for every class, every textbook, every single tuition bill? I wasn't welcome at her proudest moment. I'm not a bitter woman, but I'll admit that sting cut deep. Graduation should have been a day of joy, a celebration, a family coming together to honor hard work. But instead, I felt invisible. Replaced by friends, perhaps by pretension, maybe by a sense that I didn't belong in her perfect Instagram picture. My heart broke in ways I didn't think were possible. I'm here to tell you a story. Not just any story, but one of heartbreak, patience, and quiet revenge. My daughter may have thought she was clever, that she could humiliate me without consequence, but she didn't know. She had no idea who paid for her college. Every tuition check, every late-night study session, every penny of her education came from me. And now, just a week after her graduation, she was about to discover the truth in a way she would never forget. This is my story. The story of being ignored, underestimated, and yet having the last laugh, all while staying calm and composed, just like a mother should. I remember the day as if it were etched into my mind forever. The day I learned I wasn't invited to my daughter's graduation. At first, I couldn't believe it. I kept thinking it must be some mistake. Surely someone had forgotten to send me the invitation, or perhaps it got lost in the mail. I double-checked my phone, my emails, even my mailbox. Nothing. No invitation, no message, no call. Just silence. Then it hit me, and the words replayed in my head like a cruel echo. You're too embarrassing to attend my graduation. My own daughter, my little girl, the one I had tucked in at night, held her hand through every science project, stayed awake with during every exam, and sacrificed more than she would ever know, had said those words. I could feel a knot tightening in my chest, a mix of shock, hurt, and disbelief that left me almost breathless. I sat down, clutching the letter that had arrived for her, the program that I wasn't meant to touch, the reminder of the milestone I wasn't allowed to witness. My heart ached in ways I didn't know it could. I went through the motions of my day, but everything felt heavier. The air seemed colder, the light dimmer, and every joyful story I heard about her graduation on social media felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Anger bubbled up first, a hot, fiery surge that demanded a confrontation. How could she? How could she dismiss everything I had done for her like I didn't matter at all? My mind raced with images of standing at the ceremony, telling her exactly how I felt, letting my emotions spill out for everyone to see. But then, something inside me shifted. The raw anger softened into a sharper, quieter resolve. I realized that exploding would only feed her sense of power over me. She needed to understand, but on my terms, and in a way she would never forget. I wrestled with the conflicting emotions. Hurt and disbelief tangled with pride and love. Sadness enveloped me like a heavy blanket, threatening to suffocate me. And yet, beneath all of it, a quiet voice whispered, "Wait, watch, plan." That voice was patient, steady, and full of purpose. My daughter had made a mistake, a grave miscalculation, and though she didn't realize it yet, she had underestimated me. She had underestimated the quiet strength of a mother who had given everything, yet demanded nothing in return. Until now. I replayed every conversation we had leading up to this moment. I remembered the late nights I spent making sure she had every advantage, the college applications I proofread until my eyes hurt, the tuition payments I managed silently so she could pursue her dreams. I thought of the sacrifices I had made without a single complaint, the countless times I had put her happiness above my own. And suddenly, the pieces began to form a picture in my mind. The hurt was still there, but it had been transformed into something else. Focus, clarity, and an inkling of the plan I would quietly put into motion. I didn't want to confront her immediately. Not yet. I knew that if I allowed the initial sting of betrayal to dictate my actions, I would lose the advantage, the control of the narrative. So I let her words hang in the air like a challenge. Too embarrassing. Really? I repeated them silently, over and over, each time letting them fuel the fire inside me. Not for revenge that was reckless, but for a subtle, undeniable lesson she would learn at the perfect moment. As the day went on, I noticed the world moving as usual, oblivious to the storm inside me. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the neighborhood children play. Their laughter, innocent and carefree, reminded me of the joy I had always tried to give my daughter. And yet there was a bitter edge now, a realization that love alone doesn't always guarantee respect. Sometimes love needs a strategy, a plan, and patience. I started thinking quietly about how I would handle this. I considered my options carefully: confrontation, cold silence, or a slow, deliberate unveiling of the truth. Each choice carried weight. Each potential action carried consequences. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't just about attending a graduation. It was about acknowledgement, about respect, about making sure she realized, in no uncertain terms, that the sacrifices I had made were not invisible. The plan began to take shape in my mind, not with malice, but with precision. I would not yell, I would not embarrass her. Instead, I would let time do its work, allow events to unfold naturally, and then, when the moment was perfect, I would quietly reveal the truth of who had made her education possible. She had underestimated me, underestimated the power of quiet strength and strategic patience. And in that underestimation lay her lesson. By the time the sun set, casting a warm glow over my living room, I felt a calmness settle over me, even as the hurt lingered. The initial shock and heartbreak had not disappeared, but they had been transformed into purpose. I was ready to play the long game, to let my daughter's actions, and her words, teach her what it meant to take a mother's sacrifices for granted. As I prepared for the days ahead, I knew that every decision, every silent step, would lead to a moment she would never forget. And in that quiet preparation, I found a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. Hurt, disbelief, and sadness were still part of the story, but they had become the foundation of something greater. A plan, a subtle but undeniable reckoning, and the promise of a lesson she would learn in a way only I could orchestrate. After the initial shock of being excluded from my daughter's graduation began to settle, I felt a mixture of hurt, disbelief, and, slowly, determination. I knew I couldn't keep this inside. I needed to process it. And I needed someone who would listen without judgment. So I reached out to a few trusted family members and friends, not to stir up drama, but to gain perspective. My sister was the first person I called. She listened in stunned silence as I recounted the cruel words my daughter had said. "You're too embarrassing to attend my graduation." I could hear her gasping softly over the phone, and then she spoke, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. "How could she say that to you, after everything you've done?" And I nodded, though I was talking to the air, not her, because it felt like no words could fully capture the betrayal. Next, I reached out to my closest friend, someone who had seen me through every heartbreak, every triumph, every quiet victory over the years. She listened as I explained the situation, and she reminded me gently, "You've given so much to her, all her life. Don't let her words define your worth. Sometimes people don't realize what they have until it's too late." Her words resonated deeply with me. I realized I had spent so much time pouring love, energy, and resources into my daughter's life that I had never really considered how I would handle being taken for granted. As I reflected on my own sacrifices, the memories came rushing back. Late nights helping with homework, sitting through endless parent-teacher conferences, driving her to every practice, every event, ensuring she had every opportunity I could provide. I remembered the long hours I worked to fund her education, the careful budgeting, the sleepless nights worrying if I was doing enough. Every college application I proofread, every tuition check I mailed, every little encouragement I whispered into her ear, it all seemed to culminate in this one moment of exclusion. I won't lie. The hurt was profound. I felt like a ghost at the edges of her life. Someone invisible despite having shaped so much of it. But I didn't let it show outwardly. I understood the power of restraint. If I let my anger or hurt spill over, it would give her temporary satisfaction and rob me of the control I so desperately wanted. Instead, I chose to remain calm, composed, and observant. I let my emotions simmer beneath the surface, a quiet fire that fueled clarity rather than rash decisions. During those days following the graduation, I replayed the scenario over and over in my mind. How had it come to this? Was it youthful rebellion, peer pressure, or had my daughter truly lost sight of the sacrifices made for her success? I knew I couldn't change the past, and I also knew that confrontation now would be premature. I had to think strategically, quietly, and carefully. The lesson she needed to learn would have to be delivered in a way that she couldn't ignore or misinterpret. I also spent time reflecting on my relationship with my daughter. It wasn't just about money or invitations. It was about respect, acknowledgement, and gratitude. I realized that my sacrifices had been silent, almost invisible, and in my effort to make her life better, I had inadvertently allowed her to underestimate the depth of my role in her success. That realization was a turning point. Hurt as I was, I also felt a surge of empowerment. I understood that I had the upper hand. I had been the architect of her opportunities, and now, in her moment of pride, she had failed to recognize me. Conversations with friends and family reinforced this perspective. My sister reminded me of my dignity. You have every right to be proud, even if she doesn't show it. My best friend told me, let her think she's winning now. Patience is your ally. I took their advice to heart. I realized that patience wasn't passive, it was strategic. By observing quietly, I could understand her attitudes, her behaviors, and plan the reveal of the truth in a way that would resonate deeply and permanently. I also considered the emotional impact on my daughter. I didn't want to shame her in public or make her feel humiliated for the sake of revenge. Instead, I wanted her to truly understand the value of gratitude, respect, and awareness of the sacrifices made for her. That meant waiting, watching, and preparing for a moment when the truth would hit with the full force of realization. My anger was a tool, not a weapon. My sadness was a compass guiding my next steps. Throughout this time, I remained outwardly composed. To neighbors, coworkers, and casual acquaintances, I seemed unshaken. To my friends and family, I admitted my heartbreak, but also my plan. I allowed myself private moments of tears, yes, but only in the privacy of my own home. I journaled my thoughts, reflecting on the irony of the situation. The very daughter I had poured my life into had failed to see me as an integral part of her milestone. And yet it was this very oversight that would allow me to orchestrate a revelation she would never forget. I began to notice small things, her social media posts, the casual mentions of friends celebrating her graduation, the way she flaunted her success while unknowingly ignoring the hands that built her foundation. Each detail added to my understanding of her attitude, each careless word a piece of the puzzle that would guide my next move. I didn't need to confront her yet. I only needed to observe, document, and let the natural unfolding of events give me the opportunity I needed. By the end of the week, my emotional state had evolved. The initial shock and pain had transformed into quiet determination. I felt a calm confidence, the kind that comes from knowing you are right, knowing your value, and knowing that patience will magnify the impact of truth. I wasn't powerless. I was invisible only because I allowed it. And soon, that invisibility would turn into clarity, revelation, and an undeniable lesson for the daughter who thought she could dismiss me so casually. Through reflection, conversations, and silent observation, I had realized something profound. The hurt I felt could be transformed into strategy. The betrayal could be turned into clarity. And the exclusion could become the catalyst for a revelation that would command attention. The chapter of family drama had begun, but it was just the beginning. Patience, observation, and quiet reflection were my allies, and I knew that when the time was right, my daughter would see, in no uncertain terms, the truth of who had made her success possible. I reminded myself daily, anger is fleeting, pride is temporary, but a carefully executed plan, grounded in patience and dignity, has a power that cannot be ignored. And with that thought, I felt the first sparks of a plan forming. A plan that would ensure my daughter would never forget the sacrifices I had made, the patience I had shown, and the quiet strength that had always been my guiding force. After the initial heartbreak and reflection, I realized that words alone wouldn't be enough. Anger could be loud, confrontation could be messy, but the kind of influence I wanted required subtlety. I needed a plan, one that protected my dignity and ensured that the lesson I had in mind would hit home without drama or spectacle. This wasn't about shouting or proving a point in public. It was about quietly reclaiming the respect that had been taken from me. I began by examining everything I had done for my daughter over the years, every detail of her life I had influenced behind the scenes. Tuition payments, scholarships I had researched, every extracurricular fee, every last textbook. I had been the silent architect of her success. She had no idea the full extent of my involvement, and I made sure it stayed that way. I watched quietly as she celebrated her achievements, unaware of the foundation upon which they had been built. This was not cruelty. It was strategy. It was about timing and subtlety. During those quiet days, I organized my home office, sorting old receipts, college acceptance letters, and tuition documents. Each one was a reminder of the sacrifices I had made, the sleepless nights I had endured, the stress I had shouldered alone. I reflected on how every penny had been carefully allocated, every decision made with her best interests at heart. And yet, she had overlooked all of it. Her exclusion from graduation only emphasized the importance of revealing this truth in the most impactful way possible. I also took careful steps to maintain appearances. To the outside world, I was calm, composed, unshaken. I smiled when neighbors congratulated her. I nodded politely when friends shared their pride in her accomplishments, and I attended social events without complaint. Every interaction was deliberate. I couldn't risk giving her any hint that I had plans, that I had been quietly orchestrating a revelation. My dignity had to remain intact, my composure unbroken. That was part of the lesson itself. Strength doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it simply exists, quietly, waiting. At the same time, I began subtle measures to ensure she remained unaware of who had funded her education. I made sure that conversations about her college and tuition payments stayed with me, never letting her catch the smallest clue. Emails were carefully archived, phone calls documented, every interaction carefully considered. I was building a web of control, not with malice, but with precision. She needed to discover the truth organically, without suspicion, when the timing was right. The impact would be far greater than a confrontation could ever achieve. Emotionally, this was not easy. Resilience is often forged in moments of quiet pain, and this was one of those moments. I had to suppress my desire to confront her immediately, to voice my hurt, to demand acknowledgement. Every day I reminded myself of the value of patience. I had raised a strong, intelligent woman, and it was ironic that her strength had blinded her to the influence I had always wielded quietly. I respected her growth, but I also knew that a lesson in gratitude was overdue. My silence became my shield, my patience a strategy, and my self-respect the guiding force. During this time, I reflected on the nature of influence and power. True influence isn't loud. It isn't about domination or spectacle. It's about the quiet control of outcomes, the patient shaping of events from behind the scenes. I had given her opportunities, shaped her path, and yet allowed her to believe she had achieved them independently. That independence was important. It made her success feel earned, authentic. And now, that very independence would amplify the impact of the truth I was preparing to reveal. I also found myself revisiting old memories, moments where my guidance had been invisible yet pivotal. Times I had spoken up quietly in teachers' meetings, negotiated scholarships on her behalf, or simply been there when she felt lost and unsure. Each memory reminded me of the role I had played, the value I had brought into her life without fanfare. And each memory strengthened my resolve. This revelation would not be an act of revenge, but a reaffirmation of my dignity, patience, and resilience. To protect my emotional well-being during this quiet preparation, I created routines that allowed me to focus without becoming consumed by resentment. I spent time reading, journaling, and reflecting on what I wanted the outcome to be. I imagined her reaction, not in anger, but in awe, in recognition, in the silent realization that the life she had led was built on my sacrifices. Every step I took, every plan I laid, was infused with that vision. I also considered the long-term impact of this revelation. It was not about humiliation or shame. It was about teaching a lesson that would resonate deeply and last a lifetime. I wanted her to see the value of acknowledgement, the importance of respect, and the consequences of taking someone's love and labor for granted. That required patience, careful observation, and the maintenance of composure, even when the hurt inside me threatened to spill over. In private, I allowed myself moments of emotional release, acknowledging the sadness, the betrayal, and the disappointment. I cried quietly, journaled my thoughts, and reminded myself that these emotions were not weaknesses. They were reminders of the depth of my care and the magnitude of my sacrifices. But once those private moments were over, I returned to my calm, composed exterior. I had to remain strategic, focused, and patient. By the end of this preparation period, I felt a renewed sense of empowerment. The quiet strength I had cultivated over the years was now a tool, a method, and a plan. Every action I had taken to ensure her ignorance of the truth, every choice to remain silent, every instance of composure in public, all of it had a purpose. And when the moment arrived, when she finally realized who had truly made her college experience possible, the impact would be undeniable. I knew that resilience, patience, and self-respect were my greatest allies. I had endured heartbreak and exclusion, yet I had transformed it into preparation and strength. I had taken the raw emotions of hurt, disbelief, and sadness and channeled them into strategy. I was ready for the day of revelation, not with anger, but with quiet dignity and undeniable influence. And so, behind the scenes, I continued my careful orchestration. I maintained appearances, I observed her actions, and I ensured she remained unaware of the foundation upon which her achievements had been built. The plan was taking shape, and with each passing day, I felt more confident that the lesson she would soon learn would be one she would carry for the rest of her life. Patience was no longer just a strategy, it was power. Silence had become my ally, and dignity, the dignity I had fought to preserve, would be the lens through which the truth was finally revealed. Graduation day arrived with the kind of bright, cheerful chaos that fills every heart with excitement. Balloons, caps, gowns, proud smiles, and laughter that echoes long after the ceremony ends. My daughter was radiant, glowing with the pride of her accomplishments, unaware of the storm of emotions simmering quietly behind my calm exterior. She had meticulously prepared for this day, every hair in place, every outfit carefully chosen, every smile perfectly timed for photos. She was oblivious to the truth. the truth of who had made this entire journey possible. I stood quietly in the back, blending into the crowd of family, friends, and other proud parents. My heart swelled with pride, of course, but it was tempered by the sharp sting of exclusion. She didn't know I was there, and she certainly didn't know the role I had played in her life, quietly funding her dreams, paying every tuition bill, every extra fee, every textbook she ever needed. And I stayed quiet, for now. That silence itself was a statement, a calm, dignified observation that spoke volumes without words. As she walked across the stage, shaking hands with her principal, accepting her diploma, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. The satisfaction came from knowing the depth of my patience, my restraint, my quiet strength. I had endured the insult, the hurt, the rejection, and yet here I was, composed, observing the moment unfold. The anticipation was different. It was the tension of a story yet to reach its climax. Every laugh she shared with friends, every pose for photos, every congratulatory hug she received was a reminder that she had no idea what was coming. I watched as she received her diploma with the same beaming smile she had worn for years in every photograph I had taken of her. I remembered all the nights I had stayed awake, proofreading essays, filling out scholarship forms, guiding her through college applications, and calculating budgets to ensure she could attend the school of her dreams. Every small act of love and dedication that she had taken for granted was now quietly setting the stage for a lesson she would never forget. Around me, parents cheered loudly. Some clapped, others cried, but I maintained my composure. I didn't need applause. My pride and my quiet satisfaction were enough. This was not about making a scene. It was about observing the moment with dignity, allowing her to bask in her perceived independence while the truth of her situation remained hidden from her. I wanted her to feel the weight of her accomplishments fully, and only then reveal the foundation upon which it had all been built. I followed her through the post-ceremony photos, her laughter mingling with friends, the selfies, the calls to grandparents who had come to celebrate. I felt a strange mix of warmth and resolve. Warmth because she was my daughter, and this was a milestone I had waited for her entire life. Resolve because I knew the truth she had ignored would soon shift the balance, revealing my influence in a way she could not deny or forget. Throughout the day, I remained strategically distant. I did not intrude, I did not confront, and I did not call attention to myself. Instead, I moved quietly, a shadow of patience and power, observing everything. I took mental notes, the way she laughed too loudly with her friends, the way she posed for pictures, how she thanked everyone who had supported her. And I smiled to myself because she had not thanked me, not yet, not even once. But patience was my ally, and I knew that timing would magnify the impact of the truth more than any public display could. At one point, I stepped to the side, letting her friends and family crowd around her, capturing the moments on their phones, recording memories that would last a lifetime. And as I watched, I felt a quiet pride, not for the ceremony itself, but for the years of preparation, the sacrifices made, and the knowledge that all of this had been possible because of me. She thought her success was her own entirely, but soon, that belief would be corrected in the most profound way. The tension began to build within me as I imagined the moment of revelation. I allowed myself to anticipate it quietly, imagining her expression, her disbelief, and the realization that the quiet, patient woman in the back had been orchestrating this lesson all along. I envisioned the shock, the sudden awareness that the independence she so proudly claimed had been supported, funded, and guided by the very mother she dismissed as embarrassing. Every detail of the day served to heighten the drama. The sun shining down, the laughter, the cheers, the proud parents. I let it all wash over me while remaining invisible, a silent observer. I felt a thrill at the thought of the coming revelation, a thrill rooted not in malice, but in justice and dignity. I had endured insult, exclusion, and heartbreak, but I had done so with patience and grace. And now the day of reckoning was quietly approaching. Even as the day wound down, with her friends saying their goodbyes, parents congratulating their children, and the halls gradually emptying, I maintained my composure. I didn't rush, I didn't confront, and I didn't reveal anything prematurely. Every moment I stayed calm, every step I took quietly in the background, was a piece of the preparation, a careful weaving of patience and power. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the ceremony grounds, I felt the tension within me reach its peak. This was the calm before the storm, the final moments before the reveal. My daughter had no idea that her independence, her triumph, her day of celebration had been made possible entirely by my quiet efforts, my sacrifices, my foresight. And when the time came, she would finally understand, in no uncertain terms, the depth of my influence, the quiet power of patience, and the undeniable truth of the woman who had always been there for her, even when she pretended I wasn't. I left the ceremony that day with a calm satisfaction. I had remained composed, dignified, and observant, letting her enjoy her moment while carefully preparing the stage for the revelation that would come soon after. And as I drove home, I felt a quiet thrill, knowing that the tension I had built, the patience I had maintained, and the careful orchestration of events would culminate in a moment she would never forget. A moment that would change the way she saw me, and the sacrifices I had made, forever. It happened quietly, without fanfare, just as I had planned. My daughter had returned from her graduation, glowing with the pride of accomplishment, still wrapped up in the whirlwind of congratulations, selfies, and social media posts. She had no idea that the story of her college journey, the tuition payments, the scholarships I had supplemented, the countless hours spent ensuring she had every opportunity, was about to come crashing into her reality. I waited until she was settled at home, still basking in the afterglow of the day, unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. I didn't need to announce my presence dramatically. I let my calm composure speak volumes. I began speaking softly, recounting little stories from her childhood, the small victories, the moments she had never noticed I had guided. As I spoke, her casual attention shifted, curiosity sparking in her eyes. And then, I revealed it. The truth she had never paused to consider. Every tuition check she assumed was taken care of, every expense she believed had been her own responsibility, had in fact been funded by me. I reminded her gently, yet firmly, of the sacrifices I had made, the sleepless nights I had endured, and the careful planning I had undertaken to ensure her success. Her reaction was immediate. First, disbelief. She stared at me, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if the words I was speaking couldn't possibly be true. "Wait, what do you mean?" she stammered. You paid for all of it?" I nodded, allowing the weight of the revelation to settle in, to give her the full impact of what she had taken for granted. Shock quickly morphed into confusion, then into a quiet panic. She looked down, fidgeting with her hands, and I could see the realization dawning, the magnitude of what she had assumed versus the reality before her. She had believed herself to be entirely independent, the architect of her own success, yet the truth now confronted her. Every step of her journey had been supported, nurtured, and financed by the very mother she had dismissed as embarrassing. Then came the regret. I could see it written on her face, the sudden, sharp awareness of her oversight, her lack of acknowledgement, and the thoughtless exclusion from the graduation ceremony. Her shoulders slumped slightly, and she whispered, almost inaudibly, I didn't realize." Her voice trailed off, the words laden with remorse and dawning understanding. I didn't need to scold or berate her. That would have cheapened the moment. Instead, I let her process the revelation in her own way, allowing the natural gravity of the situation to teach the lesson I had prepared for so long. I could see the subtle shift in the power dynamic between us. She had always believed herself to be in control of her life, yet here was undeniable proof that I had been quietly guiding, supporting, and shaping her path all along. Her eyes welled with tears, not just from surprise, but from the sudden awareness of the depth of my sacrifices. I watched as she struggled to reconcile her image of independence with the reality that had been invisible to her until this very moment. I could see her internal conflict, the mixture of awe, embarrassment, and gratitude. It was profound, humbling, and entirely what I had hoped for. An emotional awakening that required no confrontation, no drama, just the undeniable truth. I allowed silence to hang between us, a space for her reflection. I could see her heartbeat quicken, her breaths deepen, as if the realization was physically settling into her bones. "Mom, I had no idea. I should have. I'm so sorry," she finally managed to say, her voice trembling. I nodded, holding her gaze without judgment, letting her words and emotions convey the weight of the moment. The beauty of this reveal was in its subtlety. I had not shouted, not accused, not demanded recognition. Instead, I had orchestrated the circumstances so that she discovered the truth at the right time, in the right context, with maximum emotional impact. And in that quiet, understated moment, the balance between us shifted, not through force, but through undeniable reality. I reflected on the years of patience, the long nights, the silent sacrifices, and the calm composure I had maintained throughout this ordeal. Every moment of restraint had been worth it. Every careful step behind the scenes validated. The power dynamics had shifted gently, yet irrevocably, in my favor. Not because I had sought revenge, but because the truth itself was a teacher stronger than any confrontation. I could see her thinking now, piecing together the timeline, the small clues she had overlooked, the invisible acts of love and support that had enabled her success. She finally understood the depth of my role, the magnitude of my investment, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And with that understanding came respect, acknowledgement, and the subtle recognition of my quiet power. As she absorbed it all, her posture changed. Her eyes no longer looked at me with casual indifference. They held a mix of admiration, regret, and newfound awareness. It was subtle, yes, but unmistakable. The mother she had once dismissed as too embarrassing now commanded her attention, not through anger or confrontation, but through the undeniable proof of patience, resilience, and quiet influence. The moment lingered, stretching into a kind of reverent stillness. She sat there, overwhelmed by the weight of what she had just realized, and I remained calm, composed, and dignified. I had prepared for this for years. Every act of patience, every behind-the-scenes effort, every silent sacrifice. And now it had culminated in a moment that would stay with her for the rest of her life. I finally spoke, softly, gently, reinforcing the lesson without accusation. You are capable, strong, and independent, but never forget that love, guidance, and support are the foundation of every success. Recognize it, respect it, and honor it. She nodded, tears streaming, and in that quiet exchange, I could feel the subtle shift of power and understanding between us. It was a profound moment, one that balanced love and authority, pride and humility, patience and revelation. The shock, the regret, and the emotional awakening had all unfolded exactly as I had envisioned, proving that quiet strength and thoughtful planning could achieve far more than confrontation or anger ever could. In that moment, I realized that this was more than just a lesson for my daughter. It was a testament to resilience, patience, and the quiet power of self-respect. I had been underestimated, dismissed, and excluded, yet I had orchestrated a revelation that shifted the dynamic between us forever. and as I watched her process it all, I felt a deep, satisfying sense of justice. Not the kind born of revenge, but the kind born of truth, love, and unwavering strength. As I sit here reflecting on everything that has happened, I realize that the greatest lessons weren't just for my daughter. They were for me as well. Patience, dignity, and family respect have proven more powerful than anger or confrontation ever could. I learned that sometimes the most profound influence is quiet, subtle, and unseen, and that strength doesn't always announce itself with loud words or dramatic gestures. Sacrifices are often invisible, taken for granted or misunderstood, but they carry immense power when wielded with patience and grace. The moments I spent behind the scenes, the choices I made quietly, and the calm composure I maintained allowed me to not only protect my dignity, but also teach a lesson that words alone could never convey. To anyone watching, I want to leave you with this. Love and support are invaluable, but so are boundaries. Standing up with grace, protecting your self-respect, and trusting in the power of quiet strength can change dynamics in ways you may never expect. Life will test you, family may challenge you, and sacrifices may go unnoticed. But hold firm, remain patient, and let your actions speak louder than words. Because in the end, it's not about revenge. It's about respect, love, and the quiet power of standing strong when no one is watching.